Irish eyes are smiling, and all the world seems bright and gay. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the music play. Is that your favorite song now?
Well, I mean, as my shirt says, I'm 0% Rish.
Irish, if you do it properly,
Yes,
that
you
helps.
you are Rish.
No, I'm part Irish, which makes today a really fun day for me.
You were
Yeah.
just telling me you wished that you were.
I
You're
well,
like Rish.
well, as far as I understand, my sister has taken the swab test, and we're half Scots, we're half like British Isles, and the other half Scandinavian German, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So,
At least
welcome.
she is.
Yeah, well, we'll find out someday. I'll probably do that. But welcome to Julia Pop. We're going to talk about all things Celtic this week. That is our theme. And then we have a slightly different microphone. I'm just using the onboard microphone today because we were having some microphone issues. So, and Crystal, welcome. So glad to see you here already and commenting. I love it. I already knew what shirt Stephen was going to wear. She is familiar with enough with
This is my
his
St.
wardrobe.
Patty's Day shirt. I really
is.
only wear it during St. Patty's Day. So.
It certainly is. And of course, I chose the Lucky Charms.
It would be
so.
even better if it was orange, but then it wouldn't be so
Well, and then you'd have to tell the whole entire story about what makes why orange, why green, everything that goes with that. But and I don't know, maybe I'll let you talk a little bit about that, depending on all of our categories that I have in my little page of all things Celtic that I studied up
I'll
on.
take St. Patty's Day for 200, please, Pat.
Ooh, is it Pat or is it oh my goodness, Jeopardy, Alex? Wasn't it Alex? I think it's Alex. Well, it was Alex, rest in peace. But now, but we're talking Jeopardy, and we've gotten off track already. But yes, I did get what? I did get little leprechaun earrings. We'll talk just a pinch about leprechauns. And Dave says, "Happy St. Patty's Day." Thank you, I appreciate that. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you too.
This is the look.
Oh, well, it's okay. So, first lesson of today. I'll do it so you don't have to.
We talked about it last week.
We did talk about it last week.
If you were paying attention last week.
I think he was at his daughter's play last week. So that's
true.
why. So he gets a pass. We're going to help. And then Crystal said, or going to the Kansas City Irish Fest. Yes, he does wear that to the Irish Fest as well. That happens in September. And so when you're spelling St. Patrick, when you spell the whole thing out, of course, it's Patrick. Patrick. If you're from Kansas City, it's Patrick Mahomes, right?
Patrick.
Spelled like that, Patrick.
Patrick.
Now, if you just shorten it all the way down to St. Pat's, it's P-A-T. But if you do the one in the middle, which is St. Patty's Day, Patty, the nickname for a man, is spelled P-A-D-D-Y. Yeah, and yes, you got it right.
Yay!
Jeff Haldeman, my fellow, we were in journalism class together. He's continued to be a journalist, and he spelled it right. Happy St. Patty's, P-A-D-D-Y, to you two. It's easy for me to fit in today. All I have to do is wear my Packers jerseys. Yep, absolutely. And Kat is here and has given us a slancha, so I do feel like we should drink to that.
No name brands.
I
drink out of this. We're not sponsored, so I'm not going to show
yet. So Crystal is saying that I hear you much better with the computer mic on my end. So I guess we'll stick with the computer mic.
That's not where the computer mic is.
I don't know.
On my end. It's not where
it
is.
So you're in jokester mode since you are. So
it's not my fault.
This man was at the Irish, was celebrating Ireland by being in the Kansas City St. Patrick's Day parade as Roddy the Scot. What better way to celebrate by? Yeah, I'm Jules. And there we go. And Kat even has the correct old spelling. St. Patrick was actually Padraig, which when you spell it P-A-D-R-A-I-G when you're spelling it in that language. So Ed got it. Ed totally got it.
Oh, of course.
Yes. Welcome, Ed. It's so good to see you. And Crystal's already shaking her head at you, just saying. So, but as we said, we were talking about all things Celtic. So I decided today, since we talked a little bit about odd holidays in the lead up, because we had Pi Day on the 14th, we had the Ides of March on the 15th.
You said odd holidays.
He keep doing that with the math jokes. He keeps doing it with the math jokes. It was low hanging fruit probably. But then on the 16th, when you're a wrestling fan, 316 is Austin 316 Day, and then of course today being St. Patrick's Day. So we move forward instead of just talking about Irish. I did, yeah, because I love the iconography of that, because whenever I'm doing like little emojis for it, I have a pie emoji, I have a dagger emoji, I have a skull emoji so that it's, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then I finally have the shamrock, which does that. So, and Crystal says, I know you have cups more decorated than that. Yes, we do. I didn't spot one offhand that was going to fit All Things Celtic exactly, so I just left it at that. So
the Piper one kind of.
Yeah, that one's definitely got some Scottish to it for sure. So, but as I said, we are going to talk about all things Celtic. So what is Celtic? So Celtic is a group of people derived from the Gauls originally. So we have to go centuries and centuries back into the past. In west into Central Europe, there was a group of people called the Gauls. And so the Gaulish culture then developed the Celtic culture. And so what makes a culture stick together is it's based in language, it's based in the arts that they do, perform, etc., and their beliefs. And so when that happens, a group of people then becomes a specific type, and in this case, the Gauls became the Celts. Just a portion of the Gauls became the Celts. And so most people can only think of a few of the different Celtics, but we're going to talk about the main list, and then we have a lower list. So the full list of the main ones are Ireland, Scotland, Wales. A lot of people forget that. Everybody knows Ireland, everybody knows Scotland. Those particular diasporas went a whole lot farther. I hope everything has it locked up. There we go.
And I don't know how you can forget Wales. They're so big.
It's such a tiny place, and so it just kind of goes, whales. But it drops a little, not whales, oh. But Wales. And so then, of course, there are three others that are highly recognized as that, and that is Isle of Man, Brittany, and Cornwall. And so while all of those except for one are in the UK general, and so, but we do have the exception of Brittany, which is just right there on the coast of France. So, and then Ed says, oh, it's a basketball team in Boston. Yes, the Celtics, when you say it that way, it is a different pronunciation.
Although, technically, and I'll get froggy if you
he loves to get technical and froggy.
There are some places in the Celtic regions that do call it Celtic.
do the soft C. Yes. So Kat says, can I start a petition to change the Guinness drop shots with the offensive name to be called McGuire's Retreats? I used to work with a dude named Vince McGuire who always did that shot on the way out the door. Yes. So the shot that she is talking about is you have your pint glass that's just partially full with some Guinness. You drop a shot glass that has equal parts whiskey, Irish whiskey, and cream liqueur, so Bailey's, and then you drop it and then take that shot. And so that often people call those slammers. So that has taken on the name of Irish slammer. Well, shooter usually, I always thought of the shooter as just the shot itself. So.
No.
But and then Kat says, you can ignore me until you get to a spot in this. No worries. Like I said, what I love about this is I feel like it's conversational, so I usually try to pipe in with your comments whenever they come up as often as possible. So these six that make up Celtic, the general Celtic tribe, groups as we know them today, it splits up into the Gaels, which are Gaelic, so that's Ireland, Scotland, Isle of Man, and then we have the Celtic Britons, which are Wales, Brittany, and Cornwall. And so they're kind of
Britain?
a funny joke that we can tell with all of our friends that know Monty Python. So King of the Britons. And so there's also a secondary list. And yes, so Kat brings up the name that we're looking to kind of veer away from, which is Irish car bombs. Bad name. Now, I'm going to go ahead and share a little story from one of our other friends that used to have a live stream very similar to this called the Unsung Screamers. They ran she still runs a bar, and they used to have something called a too soon shot, and it came from this. They were in Ireland, and they're like, yeah, let's have an Irish car bomb, and the people from Ireland are like, what are you talking about? And they told them about the drink, and they're like, how would you feel if we had a Twin Tower shot? And of course, that guy is fairly entertaining, and he didn't care one way or the other.
I'm more like Dan, which is we should be lit on fire, but that'd be fine.
Yeah, and Ed says, "I didn't vote for him."
That's right.
He gets it. Yep. So basically, from that, they decided that anytime some famous person would die, they would do a too soon shot, and it would be some silly thing. And I don't have the rest of the story on that. My friend Tara is the one that runs that bar, and she is still doing the too soon shot. And so, unfortunately, Dan passed, and so we miss him very much because we could always talk about some of the most ridiculous things, including Celtic things. I mean, he named his kid Bono. So if that tells you anything about him, knowing some Celtic things. Now, there's also a secondary list of lesser known Celtic groups, and that would be Galicia. I hope I'm saying it all right because there's a lot. Asturias, Northern Portugal, Leon, and Cantabria. Now, all of those are located in one kind of very specific spot that's just kind of the northwest section of Spain. So what happens with cultures is they tend to blend along the sides and kind of bleed into other cultures a little bit. And so with that, in these places, you would have things where the foods were very similar, where they also had very similar music styles. There are pipes. There's something called an Asturian bagpipe, and it's very different. It just has the one pipe going up, but it's very similar in all the other things, all the ways that we know the Scottish bagpipes. There's also an Irish version of pipes called the Uilleann pipes. And so we have different ways that the culture has kind of spread out and then kind of mixed into other cultures as well. And we'll talk about that a little more as well. But those are the basic groups. And so with one of the biggest things that makes a culture is music. And so the origins of, in particular, Celtic music, lots of storytelling. So this is very much a storytelling kind of culture. So we would use music to tell the story. Now also, a lot of people would sing or perform very loudly with an instrument because they're calling across the hills. It's very much a shepherding kind of a culture. And so in the same way that we have our Austrian yodelers, we have quite a few different loud singers that could really sing and make some great music. And so Ed says, "What a coincidence! So do I." But so we've definitely got the comedy coming, man. So I'm very happy about that. And also part of music was that you were able to gather together and enjoy it. You were able to fellowship with each other, and of course, in typical Celtic fashion, lots of songs that are about sadness, that are about love, that are about death. Patty always dies at the end, right? Sorry if I gave that away for anybody. And then there are plenty of instruments. Now, a note about instruments. The cool thing about instruments, so many of these instruments come from the most basic, from the most beginner cultures, from the very beginning of civilization. And then over time, a lot of these instruments, so you could you could trace those bagpipes back to like Mesopotamia if you wanted to. And there's a version of a pipe that has a bag that you play music out of. All the different instruments have that. And so, but we're going to talk about the main instruments that the Celtic groups really latched onto to create the Celtic sounding music that we know and love today. Of course, we've got a fiddle player. Now, fiddle versus violin, a lot of people talk about the differences. It has more to do with the style of playing, although people that are fiddle players will use, like in similar fashion to guitar players, will use like a metal string or a thicker string, whereas orchestral performers might use a lighter string.
But that's mostly for the former.
Yeah, because of how you're using it.
The style that they're trying to make, they style the instrument slightly different for that style.
Exactly. And then of course we know bagpipes. A lot of people think that the war pipes are Irish, but they're more Scottish. But you were just at a parade where bagpipes were everywhere. And so it just
Scots kind of everywhere too.
Exactly. And so we kind of blend all of that in. So even though there are pipes in Ireland, there are Uilleann pipes.
Point of fact here.
Go for it.
Trivia fact.
Of course.
Bagpipes to this day are still considered a war instrument.
Yes, and that was the very next thing that I do is when the Scots were going off to battle, they would put the pipes out front, and that was the battle cry sound. And so
but
then
they're
of course
still designated by the English.
And so you might
still designated as a war instrument. So you have to have a particular license to own one.
So it's almost kind of like they're a weapon.
That's right.
So and then of course we use them for events. We see them at weddings. We see them at funerals. We've used them, and they're absolutely tug at the heartstrings. It's absolutely beautiful. Amazing Grace. Of course, we understand all of that. Now, one of the things that's synonymous with Irish culture is the harp. Of course, the harp goes all the way back to the beginning of time as far as people making music. And so the harp of Brian Boru is the harp that you see on Guinness, on flags of Ireland, and all of those kind of things. And Brian Boru was one of the early kings. Boru
Guinness
Brian?
flipped it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. So it's going one direction when it's on the flat national flag. It's going the other direction when it's on your Guinness. So, and then of
10%,
course,
baby.
and then one of your favorites is a tin whistle. So, which would also be called a flageolet or flageolet.
I know somebody that has tons of tin whistles.
I think you do. I think you do. And he's welcome to speak up if he would like to speak up about
Send
that.
me that
And
photo
so,
again.
of course, that sound of the tin whistle, and part of what the sound of the tin whistle is with that music is a diatonic scale instead of a chromatic scale, which what that means is it's in a certain key. So each of your little pipes is in, say, the key of D, and you could play a D pipe on a G song, but you got to make a few little concessions and that kind of thing. But it is based on a very Western diatonic scale for all of you music nerds out there. And then, of course, later instruments that you got into in the 1800s are still very synonymous with whenever you listen to a Celtic band, something as much as the accordion, which actually had its origin in 1800s in Germany and then made its way over. You have the bodhrán, which a lot of people think of as an ancient drum, but it really wasn't recorded as being a used instrument until about the 1800s as well. But it is very much a Celtic instrument.
But also a note on that, and they talk about that because we do Ren fairs, and when they talk about that, they talk about how the kilts weren't around back then. This wasn't around back then. But when you're talking about particularly things from the more rural regions, the Highlands in particular, they didn't write things down. The songs you talked about earlier, they're storytelling. Well, that was the way they passed history along.
Exactly.
So they found just a year and a half ago now a great kilt kind of thing, but it was actually tartan patterned.
Okay.
That was 150 years before they thought that they had any tartans at all. So I constantly say when people are like, well, the tartan wasn't around until, and they
it wasn't recorded.
And I always say, and I go, we have no record of it being around until then, but there's so bad records that probably if we have one, once we have a recorded one, we probably had one at least 50 years before that.
Yeah.
You know, just statistically, if you found this, you didn't find the first one, you found one of the later ones.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you have to go back into the records and hope that you can find the information about how we can generalize how old it is.
So same things like that. A bodhrán, I'm sure 1800s.
It's probably older, and that's the thing.
It's almost always older. How much older, we don't know.
Right, because drums are some of the oldest instruments because you're just taking a hollow log, stretching something over it, playing music with it, or playing directly on the hollow log. So it does go to that most basic concept.
Because anybody can be a drummer.
Rude. And you marry him.
Well.
Yeah. So, and of course, we also understand that the mandolin is part of that sound, even though that was an Italian item, which derived from the lute, which again, many different places had many different instruments, very similar to the lute. And then, of course, the banjo came in a good bit later, and it came to us from Africa to the U.S., and then, of course, spread out even further into other cultures. So now, when you listen to a band that's very Celtic, you might also get to hear a banjo. And like I mentioned before, that it is the Celtic music has a Western structural style, so that's diatonic and pentatonic. So those of you that like blues and like to play blues, pentatonic scale, not Penta, the wrestler, but pentatonic is it's based on 5-scale tones, and that's where you're able to make blues patterns sound amazing. So most people think that bluegrass is really old, but it is not. It is more a 1940s invention, so right around the time of people like Ralph Stanley, but very similar to bluegrass is old time. They called it old time or folk music, and of course folk music is a very stretchy term as well, and so a lot of people call it trad, which is short for traditional or traddy, and so those traditional songs came into the Celtic landscape, and then of course spread out all over the world. So there are people all over the world that love Celtic music, and all of that that's the level of connection. So that's everything I have on music for now until we talk about famous people who did the music. But next I want to talk about part of a culture is the food, and so the food of the Celts would have its origins in what they had available. So dairy from the animals, grain from the fields, and meats also from the animals. And so oftentimes the most popular ones were pork, lamb, and cow. And I did write that as coo because when you say it, if you're supposed to say it Scottish, then you can't say a cow.
Cool.
You call it a
on the
coo.
grind.
You call it, hang on, I've got something for this. There we go. So if we're going to talk about coos, we're going to talk about Highland coos, and Crystal said like an a cappella group. Yep, exactly. There we go. Do I look like a Highland coo now?
I don't know. I've only seen them from
I know, we
very,
only
very
saw
far
them for
away.
a
So
difference,
go a
yeah.
long way, and I'll zoom in on a camera.
Yeah,
and then
fun
I'll tell
story
you.
about that. We went all the way to Scotland, which was great, and we'll probably do an entire separate episode of that. But yeah, we were in there in the off season, and the cows were not coming around. We went to Pollock Park, which is the place you go see the cows in the park
Glasgow.
in Glasgow, and they were so far, far away. Far, far away. We had to just like really close up, and it's kind of a blurry shot. And normally they'll just march right up to all of the, there's a fence though, but they'll march right up to all of the
A
tourists
very
and let them
jumpable
pet them.
fence. I just like to point out.
Well, I'm glad you didn't jump the fence because I would rather you not get
You
these
really talked
in
me
your
out of
in
it.
your guts. I don't know. We had other stuff to do anyway. We had a lot of fun. So,
There
but
was
yes.
there was a big sign that said, "Do not."
There
jump the fence."
was.
What?
We will not be held responsible if you jump the fence and the cows come after you. So,
I'm all
but I
right.
would have gotten a great picture out of it nonetheless. So, of course, like I said, you have pork, you have lamb, you have cow, aka coo, and many root vegetables because root vegetables did a really good job
And
of
they didn't
growing in
eat a
that soil.
ton of meat because,
There was only so much they had, and they wanted to keep the milk going, and
And-
they
and
wanted
the-
to keep
and it was
the
a
other
lot of money.
items.
The,
Yeah.
the meat itself was a lot of money. So generally, the lower end people either just ate parts of it or.
Well, and that's the biggest reason why if you ever go to the Renaissance Festival and you talk to the Arab wife, she talks about she always has her pottage, which is basically her stewing bowl. And so she'll put all different kinds of things in it, and that's your food for the day. And sometimes it was more root vegetables, a little less meat, but you put that little bit of meat in there and it goes a long way. And then of course on the shores, whenever you were off, closer to the ocean, seafood was always a big deal as well. So you'll find that there are a lot of different types and styles, and of course one of those would be, like I said, we have the stew. You also had your shepherd's pie, and so of course shepherd's pie specifically the meat would be lamb. When you're using beef, it's cottage pie. Now, what if you decided to make a shepherd's pie, but call it something different with pork? What's it called then?
So I do know this. It doesn't have an actual name, but they talk about pork is less utilized, but they have done birds.
Okay.
And so then they have like a nesting pie and all this. They gave some options, but traditionally it was never any of that, so they don't have a
real name,
traditional
a good
name
name
for
for
it.
that.
They just kind
Gotcha.
of made some.
So, and then of course, if we're going to talk about root vegetables, we are going to mention the potato. Now, interesting thing, it is not endemic to Ireland, even though it's very synonymous with Ireland these days. The potato didn't really come around to Ireland, to the island, to Europe in general, until about 1586-ish.
Came from
It's
America.
based out of Peru, actually. And so that was where I was able to find it, but they discovered that it grew very well in Ireland. Ireland grows root vegetables really well. Gourds and all of that other kind of stuff that is root vegetable as well. And so, unfortunately, much later on in the 1800s, from about 1845 to 1852, there were a number of potato famines where the potatoes had something very wrong with them. They weren't growing right. They weren't able to eat them, or if they did eat them, it would make them sick or kill them. And so that then caused some other cultural highlights, and that's why we have the level of diaspora. What diaspora is when a certain group spreads out into the rest of the world, into different areas. And so with food, we have a certain Irish Americanization. A lot of you had corned beef and cabbage to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, which is great. I love that we pick a food and enjoy it. But corned beef and cabbage is a bit more on the American side of things. So Irish Americans said,
Mom
hey,
said
this is the kind of food.
Trouble commenting. I wondered, our comments have kind of slowed.
Gotcha. So, and Linda says, I'm having trouble commenting finally. So finally I can say hi. I'll lend you pictures. Yep. So
She'll taunt us with her pictures of the Highland
is that,
Coos.
oh yes, because she went to Scotland 2 weeks after we did. and got pictures of, she's just right nuzzled up,
Yeah,
best
they were
friends with that
licking
cow.
her.
Yeah, pretty much. So one of the other things aside from food, we have certain cultural highlights. And so some of those would be, I mentioned before, language. So the original Celtic languages for quite some time were pushed out by other countries that were taking over. So England was kind of the bad guy for a while. Of course, the Norman invasions, the Viking invasions, all these things were trying to crush out their languages and put the old languages and put their new languages in. But
You say
luckily,
Romans.
yeah, that's in there too. Yeah, so I didn't mention it, but yes, I'm glad you did. So these old languages would stay very secretive, and some of them that didn't just completely die out, there was a return to use in the 1700s. So suddenly there was more of a
Well,
nationalist concept, and
and,
they started
and much like wind talkers back in the day, they would when they were rebelling against England, they would use Celtic as almost one of
a
those secret
secret
language,
language. Yeah.
exactly, that they could talk to each other
Yep.
if the, if
So
the Englishmen
and so some
understood.
of the languages have died out completely, but right at there in the 1700s, people managed to say, you know what, it's okay. You can celebrate your culture. You're still under this particular king, but you can still celebrate that. And so in later days,
Didn't
especially in
didn't
Ireland and
hurt that the
Scotland,
Scots took over the throne of England.
so that
So
kind of did bring that concept back to being far more accepted. So nowadays, when you go to school in Ireland or Scotland or even Wales, you will learn not only the English language, which is the standard, but you will also learn the old language as well, so that you will be at least somewhat fluent in that. And so pronunciations are a bit different too. So Carnarvon Castle, which is a castle in Wales, and so that is Caernarfon, which it would be Caernarfon if you said it like an American, but that's not how it comes together. Now, how would you, as a Scottish person, pronounce Meabh?
Mev.
See, that's how you do that. So that BH becomes a V sound, which is why it makes it easier to pronounce the name Siobhan. I know some people think Siobhan is Shivan, but it is Siobhan. So lots of things that are silent, a little bit different as far as the pronunciation. And so
Or Cian.
Crystal is sending us a link to mini
That's right.
Highland calves. That's adorable. Yes, they are quite adorable, and I do have a few of them scattered about,
Cian,
including
Sean. Cian, of course.
Sean, exactly. See, I know, right? And then, of course, whenever you're celebrating one of my favorite seasons, and one of my character that I play at Renaissance Festival is Scottish, and she loves fall, in particular the celebration of Samhain, which we would try to say, like, spell it Sowin, but it's spelled Samhain. So not Sam Hain, it's Samhain. And so what I always tend to tell jokes about when he is playing his Welsh character, which is Dr. John B.
Doctor.
I said that. I joke with him about, why do you guys not have any vowels in your language? Why is there a lack of vowels? Did you sell it to the Hawaiians? What's going on here? And what I discovered this week in looking around was that W is considered a vowel in Wales. I
There's
didn't
two
know
of
that.
them.
I didn't know that. Not double U.
The
W.
W
Hang on,
actually was.
hang on. Let me say it. Let me say it like
W.
American. W. W.
W was actually two U's
There
originally,
you go.
much like the two L's.
So when you say Llewellyns, that's how it comes out. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that they considered W, because it's very A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y, A-E-I-O-U and sometimes W and Y. So that kind of covers a little bit, just touch on the language. And then, of course, religion was a very big deal. So, of course, all of this started out with Druidic and very pagan type religions, but then Christianity came along. And so what
Nature
did we do?
based. I don't like the term
The pagan
just
as
because
much.
it's so.
It has a
Well, it has a
Con-
bad connotation, but I don't care
Unfortunately,
about that.
it doesn't. I don't
I
think it
care more
deserves
about
it.
it's not very detailed. Pagan
Okay.
really only means worships multiple gods.
Okay,
One
so
could
it's a
argue
general term.
Christianity worship three. But it's too general because I'm like, well, most religions then are pagan. There's only like two or three that are non-pagan.
that are just well,
Yeah.
and the thing
And
is,
so
is
you
that we
to
have
be a
better
little bit more
words.
specific.
Yeah.
This one is very nature-based.
Right, but we have better words, so
Yeah.
calling it nature-based or monotheistic, polytheistic. Lots of different options as far as when you're studying that. So Crystal says there's a lot of Irish names that I look at and I have no idea how to pronounce. You know what? I still struggle with it too. It doesn't matter how much Celtic blood I've got in me, I can still stumble on all of that like crazy. So, and of course, the religion of the time when Christianity came to the island, they did something where they kind of would blend things together. And sometimes the Catholic Church would say, oh, let's not celebrate Saturnalia. Let's have Christmas right around that same time again. So you can still celebrate, but you don't want to go, completely overboard, and you can still stay Catholic. And then, of course, in this area, we have Catholic versus Presbyterian. So, of course, the Presbyterian Church starting in Scotland, the Church of Scotland is Presbyterian. And, of course, the number of Catholics that remained in Ireland, and so that created a whole big scuffle whenever Henry VIII decided to make the Anglican Church be a thing, and he's like, no, you don't answer to the Pope, you answer to me, and that caused a whole lot of strife and a whole lot of difficulty as well.
That one actually wasn't too rough, because Henry's was essentially just Catholic, not Roman Catholic.
There you go. That's a perfect way to call it. Yeah. So, and then of course, this kind of strife has continued all the way pretty much into the modern day, because part of the reason why the Troubles were the Troubles was because it was Irish going up against English. It was a very difficult way to be, and so of course from there we have now Northern
Irish
Ireland
going up against Scottish. That's where the Scotch Irish comes from, because the English were too big of pansies to come over and try to colonize into Ireland
so they're
themselves.
like, Scottish people, go over there.
Yeah, you all will handle your own.
Well, and that was the other thing that we'll talk about, and I know I've got it somewhere on the page. Oh yeah, on how they move around, and so we'll talk a little bit about what makes Scots Irish into Scots Irish as well. So part of it too, with cultural highlights, we have socialization. So unfortunately, what we just talked about, there's some bigotry that goes around. It's like, oh, you're not from here. Oh, you have a different name. And sometimes when you would move out into a diaspora community, a different place, the United States had a very specific anti-Irish, anti-Scottish kind of lean for a long time. And so what people did often in America was use a holiday to blend, which is why St. Patrick's Day does what it does, which is why so many Italian Americans tried to push for their own time. What we were talking about last week, how Columbus Day, there were people that were like, yeah, this is an Italian that we want to get behind, and then it was bad because
they didn't research very well.
Yeah, they didn't pick a good Italian to back, wrong horse to back. So, and then of course they homogenized many of these names, many of these last names. So Siobhan then became spelled very differently. Maeve might be spelled M-A-V-E now, and so even though it had
even more
exactly, so the O or the Mac would drop from the front of the name, which is probably what happened, which is what we think happened. My maiden name is Lay, L-A-Y, which means of the shepherd. So we were shepherds. We would have shepherd's pie and lamb and all of that. And so, but we think that we might have been Macaulays or Maclays. And so we're not able to trace it back as far as we wish we could, but that's the general gist of how Cobb family. Yep. C-O-B-B-S. There we go.
They dropped the S
but
very quickly.
Weren't you also like C-O-B-H? C-O-B-B, something like that? Would you have anything close to that? Or is that going into a different...
I think that goes someplace else.
Gotcha. Okay. And then of course, we brought many of our wedding customs. When we talk about tying the knot, there are many people that do the hand fasting, which is really beautiful because that's where they kind of have like the little braid thing.
You starve your hand and don't let it eat
No,
anything.
no, not like that. You hold. It's a hold fast. It's a different use of the word fast, but thanks for trying. And one of the other really big, my favorite part of socialization was the pub, aka the public house. And it wasn't just for getting drunk. You would drink, of course, but you would eat, but you would also celebrate. It was for people to meet with their family, to also meet with their friends. So you might actually have a kid in the pub and you just kind of kept them away from the heavy alcohol. Sometimes you didn't succeed at that, but you have that. It was a get together thing. So yes, fun story, of course. When you're a kid and you're like, ha, daddy's drink, I'm going to take a sip. And then it's gross. Because when you're two, your palate hasn't kind of come up to that level yet. No, not this guy. He walks up to his daddy's martini, is like, glug, 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 and dad is turned away. Mom sees it and screams at him, Dad! And so by that time, you pretty much had the whole thing. Yeah, you started early, sir. You started early.
Can't drink your whole life if you don't start when you're young.
That's the day drinking quote, not the whole life drinking quote. Oh, my goodness. And, of course, at the pub, we had opportunities to talk. We had opportunities for music, for poetry, to argue. Sometimes the biggest revolutions would start where? In the pubs, in the public house, because people would start talking.
It's the only place you're not allowed to burn down in D&D.
Really? You can't burn down the pub. That's good.
We were not
Well, I'm going
allowed
to hang
to.
on a pub next time I'm doing that. So, one of the other cultural things that we talk about is clothing, which we've already talked about kilts a little bit. And so, kilts were very much more a Scottish thing. And then, of course, Ireland did adopt them, but much later, like into the late 19th, into the 20th century, before they started really wearing kilts. Kilts were very much more Scottish, and like he mentioned before, they might go back even further than the decades
and
and
they
the
were
centuries.
they were more long dress style than the short kilts that we think of when we think kilts now. Even the great kilts are much shorter than what the original.
So it was almost like a gown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and they were very functional because you know how ladies use their aprons to hold all the eggs. You would
Yeah.
sweep up a section of that and you'd turn it into a pocket and you could carry all kinds of things. And sometimes even shepherds could carry their little lambs.
And when they
in
needed
it, right?
to, they'd tie it into kind of.
They tie it into
pant
pants.
legs. Yeah,
So
exactly.
you could actually pull it up between your legs, tie it, and then it was pants.
Yeah.
So whatever it was that you needed done, you were able to do that. And so of course,
And on the rarest of occasion that it might rain in Scotland, they could pull it up.
and then suddenly you've got your protection. And so of course, if you need to protect your head, you have the tam o' shanter. I don't think I got one of those, and you also have the flat cap.
I took it with me to the thing. I didn't wear it. But
Okay, gotcha. And so the tam o' shanter is like the floppy one with the ball on the top, and then of course the flat cap is the Peaky Blinders. If you guys know about that, the little people sometimes call it a cabbie hat, but it's
you
that.
can
And so
cut
that
people
came
with
through.
it is what I learned. If I know anything from watching
Peaky Blinders, yeah, and it's a popular one. Everybody loves it. And so of course the reasons why we
Normally
have
our
all this
comments
fabric.
are working
I know. I
because
hope they are. We do
people
have.
aren't commenting, and normally people.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're having internet issues or what we've got going on. I don't know if your device is
I
stealing
mean, it would
anything.
tell us if we weren't.
Okay.
commenting.
Okay. I hope so anyway. So, but like I said, you know how it goes. This has always been a work in progress, and I know it glitches up sometimes, but you know that just adds to the pop culture. It's like we're max headroom, right? So anyway, but wool was one of the main things that were used because, of course, that came from the plentiful sheep. You'd shear the sheep, and you'd be able to have enough wool to clothe your entire family and then some. And so,
again, as we talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
it rained so bleeding much over there. Wool was very nice because it had that natural oils in it, so it made it very water.
so it could
there we
keep
go.
that water out
Crystal's
from you. So.
fine.
Okay, Crystal's commenting fine.
You're
So
the
that's
only one
perfect.
we need, Crystal.
Aw, don't be mean to all the rest of our other people, our wonderful, wonderful watchers. And then, of course, so whenever you started doing all this weaving, Scotland got creative because certain different colors and all different kinds of things. So this is where your tartans came from. This is where your plaids came from, and they came from what your particular clan had available. So different colored tartans then became assigned, or thought of as being belonging to different clans. So Jeff says, "Thank you too. I wore my Larry Bird Celtics gear a lot when these two were in high school with me. Mom, by the way, was a McKenna, so this was always a special day. I love that.
I
Yep.
don't know if you have it in here. I don't
What's that?
particularly see it.
Which
But
part?
so one of the reasons, Kansas City, so there are a few regions that have really high Irish things.
It'll be right here.
All right.
Yeah, I'll get you
I'll let it
there.
go.
I promise I'll get you there. But finishing up on all of the weaves that they would do. So they would have the different color tartan weaves, plaid, which was considered just a blanket, but they would make it with the tartan style. So that's why we now call that plaid a lot of the time. Also Argyle, because Argyle was a location and they had
right.
that particular design. And then tweed was another design, and houndstooth. And here's the interesting one: the paisley design came from Middle East, but got named paisley because of how often it got used in Paisley. It here in the Celtic, Paisley, England, Paisley, Scotland, Paisley, Ireland. I forget where it is.
Could only
Paisley.
be
So
2 out of 3 of those
exactly.
at most.
Exactly.
It could
So
be England and Scotland, depending on the year.
depending on the location on where it
was-
landed.
yeah.
But all of these different patterns came from all of the different weaves, creations, and everything, and got named after it. So, of course, one of the other cultural things that are all over the place in Celtic places are castles. When we went to Scotland, we were very fortunate to be around. We didn't go inside Edinburgh Castle, but we went inside Doune Castle, which we already talked about. Monty Python, that was where they filmed a good bunch of Holy Grail.
And we had headsets, and the people that were guiding us through were
It was Terry it was Terry Jones did part of it, I think, and then Michael Palin did part of it. So yes, it was really entertaining to have them in our ears, and it was not long after Terry Jones had died. And so I was just like, oh, rest in peace. I still get to hear your voice. And so it was a really cool moment. And then my other favorite was Stirling Castle. And so I based my character in Stirling that I play at Renaissance because of how much I loved that castle and because of how much I loved uh, all the different details and things that you saw. And so some castles are just in ruins, some castles are very well cared for. In Ireland, you have Blarney Castle, Dublin Castle, and Ashford. Of course, Wales has its fair share as well. Carnarvon, which I mentioned before. Pembroke Castle, which is where Henry VII was born. So that's our Welsh connection to unite all of these different areas. And then, of course, even in places like Isle of Man, you have Peel and Derby Fort, which is, or no, wait, hang on. No, hang on, I'm counting my way through. Yeah, and so Henry VIII actually set up Derby Fort as an additional place for them to feel more protected off, so that the islands were also well fortified so that they had extra layers of protection so people wouldn't come and attack England itself. And then, of course, there's also Fort Lalatte and St. Michael's, which are in kind of the outlying areas of Brittany and Cornwall, and they're right on that very edge of the sea. And so they're really beautiful. If you have a chance to look those up, I'll try to share some beautiful photos of that, but it's like this great castle just right on the very end of where the land meets the sea, and it's really beautiful. Of course, we talk a little bit about holidays. Of course, St. Patrick's, which we're celebrating today, it gets more celebrated in the U.S. than it does in Ireland. Ireland, it had been, at least it's the tide is turning a bit more. They do have more parades, but it used to be Ireland celebrated in a more quiet, religious way. Of course, it's party time here in the U.S. and other places, and it's becoming that more.
The Kiwis celebrate it.
New Zealand does it as well. Yep. So, and then of course, anybody celebrate St. Andrew's Day? That happens November 30th, and so each group, and I made a hilarious little thing that we might need to not even get to, but each country has its own saint and its own saint celebration day. So, of course, Ireland has St. Patrick's, Scotland has St. Andrew's on November 30th, Wales had St. David's Day, and that was on March 1st, which, oops, we missed it. Isle of Man has St. Mogold, which is April 27th. Cornwall, Brittany also have St. Piran's Day and St. Ivo's Day. Now, in Cornwall, if you have the Parentide, that means that you partied too hard on St. Piran's Day. So there were other places that were also celebrating in a very similar Taiwan kind of fashion. And so it just depended on the country, depended on the area as far as how they would celebrate. Like I said, in Wales, we have St. David's Day, and they would have Welsh cake, which is kind of like a scone. And for us, we know it as kind of like a sweet biscuit, is what we Americans would know it as. But if you're Scottish, you would call it a scone instead of a scone. But, accents. And so then, of course, also in Scotland, we have Hogmanay, which is the New Year. And a fairly recent version of Hogmanay celebrations, which have been happening for a very long time. It goes back to Druidic times and forward. We had the Looney Duke, and that started, I don't know, in the 1980s. A couple of guys were drunk at the pub on New Year's and said, let's go jump in the River Forth. And so they would go jump in the River Forth.
Which is, anyone that's done anything like that knows that's not how that conversation went.
No, well, whatever it was, but it's more of a polar plunge.
Oh, I bet we can't go into the drink.
No,
I could do it. It's not that cold. I'd be fine.
I'd be fine. Absolutely. I'll be wonderful. It'll be aces. It'll be fine. And so, yeah, so that is fun. I hope to go maybe see it. I don't know if I would want to go participate. I don't really feel like having a heart attack in really cold water. And then, of course, we have the stories. And so a lot of people think that the Leprechaun goes back a lot farther than it does. Again, when was it recorded? So it might have a much older storytelling tradition, but who was it? Let me find it. Oh, yes. William Butler Yeats really started to codify what's a leprechaun? What does a leprechaun do in the 1800s? Previous to that, and I don't know, I haven't seen, Crystal says that we're freezing. I'm not sure why we're having so much trouble with our internet today, but we'll try to keep working. Oh, freezing cold. Okay, sorry. I don't know. I guess I'm just too in my head about making sure that everything goes okay. All right, but so anyway, but further back, the Fae that were known to people that knew Irish lore were the Ishi. It's spelled AOSSI, and she, which is spelled SIDHE. And so there are people, including Inger as well as Rowan, Aspen and Rowan, are characters at Renaissance Festival, and they are those particular style of fae. They're brownies.
But to be fair, when you talk about trying to get those things like the leprechaun,
Yep.
Celtic culture doesn't talk about the fae. They're ingrained in their culture, and one of the things is you don't talk about them, you'll summon them, you'll bring them forth.
So it's like Fight Club.
It's
Crystal,
worse.
You picked up what Crystal's putting out in the water. Yeah, sorry,
but so it's one of the things they talk about is it's like, oh, we fail whatever, we didn't get into any of that. But then you'll have a highway that just veers around this tree. They're like, why do you have this tree in? You didn't worry about that tree.
No reason.
So we just decided to go around that one.
So it's like Fight Club. There's no talking about it's in hushed tones.
Yes, it's Voldemort. It's more about what
so
it's
they
like.
That shall not be named.
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. And so Crystal says it is a little bit more glitchy tonight than it has been. So, like I said, we'll see. I don't know what we can come up with. I've got an IT guy, and I don't think that's how he normally does it. But hey.
Try turning it off, turning it back on.
And I'm more than willing to do it again, but I can't really do it in the middle of a show. At least I'm not planning on it. And of course, one of the most interesting things that got more people to come visit Scotland would be the Knights Templar. Of course, a little movie called The Da Vinci Code that brought people around to the Rosslyn Chapel to see if it was, what's the Grail, what's the big deal, and the Priory of Sion. And so all of this kind of winds its way through Scotland, which is perfect because, it's very far afield. There would be a random castle that would have something like this. And of course, there are also accurate depictions, the Battle of Culloden. So that is a very well storied event that happened. Again, it's British fighting against Celtic, Scottish, Irish. There's a lot of fighting going on between everybody. And then, of course, you may have heard the song Rhiannon, even though the concept is the name Rhiannon came from a Welsh matriarchal god. And so, of course, Stevie Nicks uses it because it's a really beautiful name. I have a friend named Rhiannon. She's pretty cool. And so Rhiannon would be one of the other stories that often has lots of different stories that go with her lore. And Stephen, welcome. It's good to see you. He says, what happens in Feyland stays in Feyland. And you are absolutely right, my dear. Absolutely right. And so, of course, Scotland has, I believe that's right. Right. Oh, no, Wales. I'm getting all my directions wrong. Wales. In Wales, you have Snowdon, which is a mountain. The area is called Snowdonia, and it has a whole lot of lore that goes with it too. And that is considered the origin of the Lady of the Lake, which is King Arthur, the legend, how moistened chick delivering swords, lobbing swords isn't a form of government, but yes, so that's where the King Arthur legend comes from. So that puts King Arthur as being Welsh, and then
that's right. Yeah. That is the theory always was the King Arthur was Welsh, which is why the English
Prince
took claim to part of Canada actually to start with,
okay.
But in general, that's how they got into North America was Dr. John Dee traced back because during the Arthurian legends, there's one where he sends one of his knights off to conquer new lands, and so the tale was that those new lands were actually Nova Scotia area.
So he could be the one to say first.
Yeah. So that flag planting, and because King Henry the Tudors were Welsh kings as well, that's what laid claim.
So we missed the payoff because I was going to talk about how Merlin, the wizard, was considered very Welsh. What other wizard-like character do we know that was also considered himself Welsh? Dr. D.
Coming soon.
It's Dr. D.
To a Muskogee near you.
That's true. That is true. If you do want to see Dr. John Dee, I know Kansas City gets rowdy nowadays, but yes, you will get Dr. John Dee whenever you come visit us at the Oklahoma Renaissance Festival.
Also Sean Connery.
Now, hey, I'm glad you said that because we're going to talk about, yes, that's right, but Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. And so we'll talk a little bit about movies, and what's the first one I bring up? Highlander. Most people, when they think of Scottish movie,
Some
they
of the
think
best
Highlander.
fight scenes in movies
Yeah.
is in Highlander.
Yeah, and then of course one of my favorites was an animated one called
Oh,
Wolfwalkers. My
yeah.
daughter assigned it. I went and watched it with her, and watch it with your kids if you have kids or people you think of as your kids. Oh my goodness, my daughter and I, we were just clinging to each other, crying, "I love you, sweetie. I love you too. Oh my god!" So it's a beautiful, beautiful, very well
Just
animated
like I
movie.
do during Highlander.
There can be only one. And so, of course, most people know of Braveheart, but a better told movie story is one called Outlaw King. And Chris Evans, one of the guys that's a superhero now, plays the part of William Wallace. And I think because we have in the story, of course, we have William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, right? And so they're trying to make sure that control of Scotland is control of Scotland, and it's its own whole story.
It has such significant historical inaccuracies
Problems,
in it.
yeah. So, but
it's a good movie.
Yeah.
I like the movie,
But
but it's like, oh, look at this history. All right, this one bit. It's like superhero movies. I'm going to change the core being of this one character and leave the rest okay. It's like,
yeah, so it was problematic, but like I said, if you like Braveheart, it's a good. Now we all know how to yell Scotland.
Right.
Now we know how to yell for that, right? Of course, other movies such as Boondock Saints
yeah.
has that very Irish culture, of course, in what we do. Far and Away, which was, of course, Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise, a big epic movie from back in the day. Rob Roy. There have been a couple of different versions. I don't remember what the most recent one year was, but that story's been told since 1922, and that's of course
the latest
related to Roddy, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The one in the 80s also has some of the best fight scenes
Does it? Okay.
in cinematic history.
Nice.
But yes, they did. Rob Roy is a McGregor, which is my clan.
Yep.
My clan, Rob Roy, but he couldn't use Robert McGregor because that was during the time that
if you said you were a McGregor, you got killed.
Yeah.
Just like killed. Oh,
Not
your
like
last name's
kilt.
McGregor. It's like
not like kilt. They didn't let you wear a kilt.
Death. It was death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stabby.
Death. Yeah, stabby. So of course, Macbeth. Should I have said that? No, we're not in a theater, so I'm allowed to say that word, okay? And that has been in so many plays, movies, you name it, all of that. One of my favorites is Waking Ned Devine. I would definitely want to go back and watch that. It's kind of a national lottery, gets won by someone who just happens to, I'll let you watch the story. Of course, we have My Left Foot, which was an Oscar winner. Michael Collins, which was also up for Oscars. Wicker Man, which is another one that gets told. And the Wicker Man has a little bit more of like it's the faraway islands, because of course we have the Hebrides and we have Isle of Man, which are even more like far away and out there. And of course, Brigadoon, a big favorite as far as musicals are concerned. Another one that came from like the 80s into the 90s, In the Name of the Father. There was a movie that actually came out about Greyfriars Bobby, which we have a picture of me at that statue, which we'll tell that story a little bit later. Of course, one of my favorite Disney animated is Brave. Merida is my girl. I love her. She's my favorite princess. And of course, some of the grittier and newer ones like Trainspotting and The Commitments. Yep. Oh man, that one's still a rough one for me to watch though too. So what he mentioned before, and we're running out of time because we've got 7 minutes, but I bet we can do this. The diasporas. So how did all of this culture then spread across the world? So we have travel patterns, and so in mainland Europe, we have France and Spain. So everything kind of grew into Brittany, and it's its own place. The places that we said in northwest Spain. In the New World, of course, the biggest diaspora of Irish is in America. 33 million United States citizens are Irish heritage citizens. And they have big landing spots like Boston, Chicago, Appalachia, because of the similar areas.
Philadelphia, more Scots landed in Philadelphia than in any other city.
And Kansas City is one of the big ones too, which is why we have all of these Scottish families that are still here to this, or sorry, did I say Scottish?
Yeah.
Sorry. This is why we have all of this level of Irish diaspora. And so, of course, in Canada, we have Nova Scotia, New Scotland.
New Scotia, actually.
New Scotia, there we go.
Because Ireland was actually Scotia.
Okay.
And I don't remember what their term for east, but Scotland was actually East Scotia, whatever they say east is.
Yep. And then, of course, and even in South America, Argentina has a very large Irish South American population. How about that? Irish, Argentinian, and of course Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, but
And then
Australia was mostly those were the political discontents that they shipped off
yeah,
to
penal
Australia.
colonies. So
Yeah,
when
and
you
a
were in
lot of it
trouble
was
and they
very,
wanted to just get
a lot
rid
of
of
it
you.
was very political, is
Yeah.
because you were causing trouble for them. And so they
Exactly.
shipped you
And
off.
you do
New
have
Zealand, on the other hand, was more they migrated there.
gotcha. Yep. So, so, and then the final one that we do have, because like I said, Australia, New Zealand, also a little bit in Asia. So there is a bit of diaspora in Japan and Hong Kong. A lot of that comes from the amount of British soldiers that happen to be Celtic in some way coming over there. So, and then reasons why. People would leave because of the famine. People would leave because of the politics, because of wars, religious persecution. And some people would come to these places as, say, a soldier and then just continue to stay. And some people are escaping persecution. Some people were displaced, something called the Highland clearances. So the Scottish people had landlords, and when the landlords were like, nah, you got to go. And they would move them into the cities. Then the cities were like, nope, you've got to go. And that was how they ended up spread out further to the four winds, including here in the United States. And sometimes it was for opportunity, for criminal rehab, or if you were sent away somewhere else, you could try making a new life in a new place.
Well, and the Scots in particular, especially the Highlanders, liked the open spaces, and as they closed around them out in Scotland, like you say, getting displaced,
Yep.
they came here because for a long time, especially during the expansion era of the United States, when we bought the Louisiana Purchase, and we're like, if we don't claim it soon, other people are just going to move in and take it. They were just offering land. That's far and away mentioned stuff like that. So they were just offering land, and so they heard that they all were offering land, and so a lot of them came out here to try to get pieces of that land. Generally, by the time they heard about it, it was months and months and months and months after they were actually giving it away. So by the time they got there wasn't.
Then they had to come up with something else to do anyway.
Or just go further.
Yeah, and then part of that too were the gold rushes. So anytime there was a gold rush anywhere, then people
or rush
that were looking
of
for
any sort,
silver rush,
yeah,
you name it. So, so that's we've got 3 minutes to go. So I'm going to rattle off fictional Scots, Celts, Irish. And I'm going to do it
in like a Celtic tone, like our songs where they go really, really fast and you do a lot of words all at once.
So many words in Celtic songs. You're
go,
absolutely
go.
right. So this is going to include Irish, Scottish, some Welsh. It's just a little bit of everything. Here we go. William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, Mary Queen of Scots, Brian Boru, Bram Stoker, Oscar Wilde, Robert Burns, Robbie Burns, Shrek, Groundskeeper Willie, and then of course we have back to the known people, Gerard Butler. The movie So I Married an Axe Murderer has so much fantastic Scottish accent. Lucky Charms, of course, we've got Lucky himself, Scrooge McDuck being another one of the animated ones. Back to the real people, we've got the Bee Gees, came from Isle of Man. Enya from Ireland, U2 from Ireland, Sinead O'Connor, one of my favorites, also from Ireland, The Chieftains, Van Morrison, Sean Connery, Liam Neeson, Cillian Murphy, and Saoirse Ronan. And so that's just kind of my little rattle off of all of the lists. I think, let me double check here just to make sure I haven't forgotten anything I wanted to talk about. No, I think that covers all of that. Oh, yes, and of course, other famous musicians, probably the most famous Welshman would be Tom Jones, Shirley Bassey, and Anthony Hopkins. And then there are some people that it was harder to find people from the lesser places. Roger Taylor and Mick Fleetwood, two rock stars that came from the Cornwall area or spent some time in Cornwall. In Brittany, we have Jules Verne, who I named my character after. And of course, we have a lot of harp playing as well as bagpipe playing that happens in those. So,
a lot of Celtic punk.
Right, exactly. I know. Well, I ran out of time. So yes, the Pogues. Dropkick is based out of Boston, right? And so all of this diaspora has continued to create some just amazing music, and I'll try to keep posting different stuff about that on the Julia Pop page. Thank you guys again for attending and commenting. We'll have to check and see why we're having some commentary problems, but if I missed your comment, I'm sorry. I'll try to go back through and reread those and respond to any of those that I might have missed.
Yeah, or if you're watching later.
Exactly. So, and like I said, if you are watching this later, please feel free to comment because I do love to see those comments later on, and I try to respond to those as well. So, it's time for me to tell you what next week is going to be. You don't even know. I didn't tell anybody. What is it? Make a guess. You have like 30 seconds. No, you have 5 seconds. Guess.
Animals.
No. So, the answer on this one is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It
And what do
has
they have
been
in there? Humans, which are animals. I win.
every time. So what we're going to talk about is there's a lot of controversy around that. Like, why Cleveland? And why do certain people get in and others don't? And is that rock and roll or is that not rock and roll? We're going to have all those talks next week. I'm going to tell you a whole lot of why, where, what for. I'm going to show you lots of pictures about how much fun we had. I've dragged my family there. I've been there 3, maybe 4 times. I've lost track. But yes, I love it. I will totally go back again. So we are going to talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Everything right with it, everything wrong with it, and museum. And Crystal went with us. So she's got pictures galore. And she mentioned the Corrs and she mentioned Enya. Yes, I did. Enya was part of my rattle off speech as well. So once again, guys, thank you so much. Those of you that were able to comment, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all joining us. I hope you'll join us for next week. Go back and watch all the old ones. And then Steven says, and still no Howard Stern.
Right.
So can't wait. Awesome. So thanks again, guys. We will see you next time, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Special thanks to Steven for being part of it. I appreciate it.